Hello and welcome to Salubrious Skin with Dr. Irene. Today I'm really excited to be interviewing a wonderful lady called Sarah Tynan, and this is quite a serendipitous moment for me because I've wanted for the longest time to do a show on kinesiology, and it's more about my journey where I've kind of gotten through all these structural changes, changed my lifestyle choices. I've changed my diet. I've, improved relationships around me. I've gotten rid of toxic friendships. I've done all this stuff, but then there seems to be some residual element that causes the re-emergence of various psoriatic lesions. And so I have done a few sessions with various kinesiologists, and it's such a strange thing because I notice that the lesions on my legs start to dissipate, and I've done nothing different. I haven't eaten anything different. I haven't suddenly gone on a nice holiday to the Greek islands. I haven't done anything different, and yet these spots just start to go. And so when Sarah connected with me on LinkedIn and I had a look at her website, I was like, this is kind of something that was meant to be. I've always put it out there. I want to interview someone in the space of kinesiology who's very knowledgeable, and I honestly don't think I could have found anyone more knowledgeable than Sarah, because she's a teacher, and so you teach, and
yes,
you have clinical practice and all these sorts of things that I was reading on your website, and I was like, this is the person I've got to have on my show. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much. It is a funny thing, isn't it? I love when things align like this. So
Yeah, I was really surprised, and it was kind of a last minute thing too. So that makes it even more special, I think.
I totally agree.
Yes.
Agree.
Okay, so I wanted to start with, because I know you've had your own experience, and that's kind of where a lot of us practitioners get into our area, because that was certainly the truth for me as well. So I want, if you could share a little bit about your experience and how that evolved to the space of kinesiology.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely went on my own journey. I'm originally from Northern California. And I moved to Australia. I was relocated through the company I was working for. I was working in the Silicon Valley at the time. It was a corporate organization. It was really full on, really fast paced. So I moved to Australia, and that came with all of the standard stresses. But it was interesting because as I was moving here and settling into my job, I couldn't help but feel that I was just out of place slightly. I knew that I was meant to be in Australia. I felt comfortable here, but I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing myself, as we all do. And that's sort of the programming that we have, is just to push through it. It'll be okay. And as you do that, you obviously just start suppressing things. And it was literally all of a sudden, I just started feeling little tweaks in my neck, and just little things started coming about. And I just ignored it. And just thought, again, we're programmed to just take a tablet or, just keep pushing through. And then all of a sudden one morning I woke up and I could not get out of bed. Like, all of the signs all along the way, they were left ignored. I actually got diagnosed with underactive thyroid as well.
Oh.
I literally was like a mannequin. I couldn't hold the weight of my head, actually. I had to wear a neck brace to work, which was embarrassing because nothing happened. I wasn't in a physical accident. I didn't have anything physically happen to me that triggered this neck issue, and it was quite severe for me. So I went and saw literally every practitioner under the sun, as I'm sure we all do when we feel like we're at our wits' end.
Yep.
And look, they're all amazing, and they all definitely have their place. But it wasn't until I saw a kinesiologist did my neck pain completely go, and it never came back.
Wow.
I could not believe it. I was seeing, there were types of therapists I was seeing every other week just to control it and loosen it up and get it to sort of a place of alignment. But I still remember my first session, and now this is years ago, and I just walked out of there going, what was that? So it just blew my mind. And looking back now, it was so obvious to me what was going on. There was just so much that was unsaid. There was so much of my truth that I was holding back, and just so much that was suppressed, and there was nowhere for that emotion or for that energy to go. So it was all just accumulating in my neck.
Yeah.
And once I was able to express that and energetically release it and get to the actual seed that was planted and that root cause of the issue, my body healed and realigned itself, and it is amazing.
Wow. That truly sounds amazing. So, because when you're talking, my Chinese medicine brain starts, going, oh, well, that's the gallbladder meridian, and that's where, the emotions get caught up. So I've got a whole lot of other questions, but just dawned on me. Would you say, and like you said, everything has its place within our, health system.
Yes.
Would you say kinesiology is really something that's mostly effective for people that their ailments generate from an emotional issue?
So,
say for instance, you had a car accident and touch wood, and you had that same symptoms, would it have been just as effective, or do you think it really hones into the emotional ones?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. So with kinesiology, and this is funny because it's a unit I literally just taught, so there's the alignment. We work on the triad, we call it the triad of health. So one of the legs, so it's obviously like a little pyramid. One of the legs is the emotional and the spiritual connection.
Yep.
So then you have the physical realignment, so the physical connection, and then you have the diet. So we do look at everything holistically. But in a case of if someone was to get into a car accident, there are still a lot of emotional triggers that won't, unless you have those released, the body won't fully realign. And this is why you see some practitioners, like chiropractors, you might have to go get a bi-weekly or weekly alignment because you haven't touched on that emotional seed that was planted in the body that caused the body to get out of alignment in the first place, or that's not allowing the body to fully heal on the levels that it could.
Yeah. So because we're human and we're not robots, there will always be an emotional component, even if it was generated by a completely non-emotional component.
Yeah, that's right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you really want to get into, and everybody has different beliefs, but like if you really want to get into deep the spiritual side of it, like what invited that circumstance to take place into their reality, because that would be an underlying emotional issue as well. This isn't for me, this is me personally, I truly believe that we are energetic beings and that we do on some levels create things in our reality. So then it goes back to, why did that even happen? So
that's something that I always ask myself too, because you do see a repetition of events, or a repetition of behavior, or repetition of outcomes. And, and you hear people say, oh, bad things always happen to me, or I always have this happen to me. And you kind of say, well, because you just said bad things happen to you. You are kind of telling things that are bad to come to you, but I don't think people necessarily recognize it. And I think if it's ingrained, and often with my patients I've noticed that it's conversations their parents have had, and statements their parents have used, and it literally becomes ingrained in your cells, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's patterning, and it's just, if you look at like how our society influences that as well, and it's fair enough, that's just what we're exposed to, so that's what we take on, all of these other belief systems. And it's a natural thing, and from there we develop a lot of subconscious self-sabotages that I recognize, clear those almost every session with people. But people need to be, and that's another thing we talk about when we are teaching kinesiology at the college, people need to be very acutely aware of their languaging and how, because this might be just a subconscious thing that they're saying, oh, this always happens to me, and I don't even like to say it. But there are experiments out there that prove the power of our words, and you can actually do this at home. And I have a picture of it on my computer where a dear friend of mine, I don't know if you've seen the rice experiment, where you have 2 jars of rice and the variables are the same. You sterilize both the jars, you put the same rice in each jar, and then on one jar you write really bad words, which I won't say, but like, not less than good words. And then the other jar you write, I love you, you're beautiful. And you talk to these 2 jars, you kind of place slightly away from each other, but you say not so good things to one jar and you say beautiful things to the other jar, and you see the bad jar going moldy and the other
Wow.
jar stayed pristine. So
That's amazing.
it is amazing. And this is something that everyone can do in their home as an experiment. I think it's a beautiful thing to show your children, because if you can teach your children at an early age the power that your words carry, then hopefully they'll be programmed to only want to say positive, beautiful things. And therefore those positive, beautiful things will hopefully start showing up in their reality more. But you can imagine what those negative words are doing to your body. And when those negative words are trapped in those energy meridians and manifesting themselves, they're literally sort of eating away at your body on an energetic level. But then that's what, if you keep it there long enough, you will experience physical ailments.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think, like you said, society is really generated in a way that perpetuates that, doesn't it? It's it's interesting how you don't want to even say it, even though you don't believe it.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, oh, clearly I shouldn't be saying anything either.
Yeah.
So how did sorry.
Oh, go. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, so how can kinesiology change your thought processes if they're kind of ingrained? How does that process work?
Okay. Oh goodness, there's so many.
And you've got 2 seconds to.
I know. It's such an individual process, which makes it so beautiful. Because everybody's been through such individual experiences. So literally what we're doing is we're speaking to the body, and we do that through muscle testing, which any trained kinesiology practitioner can do. But I always, like, for me, I'll say I'm a kinesiologist and people are like, oh, you're a healer and this and that. I'm like, no. I'm just a facilitator. For me, it's about the process of empowering people, because everyone is their own healer. And your body is trying to talk to you all the time.
Yeah.
So if you just initially listen to these little cues, like if I listen to the little tweaks in my neck originally, or if I listen to my stomach bloating, or the sore throat or whatever else, I could really tune in and really listen to what my body's trying to say. But unfortunately, we don't do that because we're not programmed to. So as a kinesiologist, I'll talk to your body through muscle testing. There's literally hundreds of different techniques, a lot of tapping. I find different tapping techniques help to start reprogramming and reframing things. But if you're literally just clearing the energy meridian, so we have, as you would know, different energy meridians that go throughout our body, and specific emotions can get trapped in those meridians that manifest themselves. Yeah. So we can ask the body what technique it needs to help clear that emotion that's trapped in that meridian. And then when that energy flows, again, the body has the ability to then realign and heal itself. Yeah, that's amazing. That's sort of answering that question.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. And I think that's where it all comes down to, is the blockages that are manifesting, that are as a result allowing syndromes or symptoms or whatever signs as well. You know, it's even facial colors can change. You know, people can look quite pale or get melasma or all sorts of things. So it doesn't have to be a prominent symptom. It actually can be just the signs the body gives off as well. Exactly. And that's where I think where people need to be quite in tune with themselves and what they need. Yeah. So, sorry, I kind of went on my own tangent.
Oh, I love it. That's good.
I wanted to ask you if, and I don't know, every kinesiologist is different, but what I've heard a lot of kinesiologists say is that emotional traumas can get passed down generations. Yeah. So say, for instance, 10 generations ago, there was, and you know, we are kind of all offspring of war, you know. Yeah. So is that, so could it even be something that you're not doing, but it's simply something from the past that is inflicting the issue?
And that's where it can get pretty deep, because some people are just like, I do feel like I'm tuned in. I do feel like I listen. So why does this not feel like it's mine? There are units that we teach. There's something called an energetic miasm, which is that sort of glitch, if you will, that's literally passed down from generation to generation to generation. If you think, like, you look at little children and how absorbent they are, and how much they change from day to day. We both have young children, and it's just like, how did you learn that, or how did you pick, or how do you know to say that? The way they're able to verbalize things is just how readily they're absorbing everything. But we're the same as energetic beings.
Yeah.
So we're absorbing things in our mother's womb, and then who knows what she's absorbed, and then that's how that links back from generation to generation. But we just because we don't consciously have that awareness that that's what's happened, we don't even know that there's a potential to clear it.
Yeah.
The other thing that is happening as well that I see a lot is there's an energetic surrogation happening, meaning mothers do this all the time. We see somebody going through something, and so energetically we think, if we, it's a subconscious thing, if we just take this from them energetically, then they'll be better. But that's not what happens. We're energetically taking it, but they're not changing.
Yeah.
So we're taking on this stuff that is altering us energetically, but it's actually doing both of us a disservice. So we can't show up the way we would normally if we weren't energetically trying to take this on. It's just because we feel for people and we want to help them.
Yeah. And you also want to, with your children, you want to protect them as much as possible.
Of course.
Yeah. I had this strange, actually, it just popped into my head. I had a strange situation happen yesterday. I took my little boy to Forest Hill Shopping Centre, because that's where Thomas the Tank rides are, and he's absolutely obsessed with Thomas, like every day. He's actually changed his name to Thomas, so if you ask him his name, he'll say Thomas. And where Forest Hill, it's kind of nuts. The lady that drives it, she just laughs at him every time she sees him. So upstairs, can you hear me properly? Yeah. Upstairs there's time zone, so he usually just runs around, and there's a couple of little children's one where he kind of knocks with a little soft hammer thing, he knocks things down and stuff like that. And there's this ride, I guess, that it's quite dark. It's like a room, and it's got curtains that just come halfway down. So his height, he can just walk right under it. Okay. And I usually try and stop him, because I don't know if there's kids in there playing. And he kind of ran in before I realised he went there. And I looked, and I saw a gentleman, just his legs, just holding a gun. I don't know what, because you can't see, right? You can't see what they're doing. And then he quickly ran out, and then he came to me, and there was this little rider, like a little tractor thing, and he kind of just rides on that. It's really for a child, because it doesn't move or anything like that, just a little bit. And this gentleman comes out, and he's just standing near me and staring. And I'm looking at him, and he goes, "Oh, very cute." And I was like, yeah. And I literally had to stand. I felt I had to stand between him and my little boy.
Wow.
I literally stood in front of him, because I'm like, weirdo. Go away. But then I kept thinking about it, and I've kept thinking about it, and oh my gosh, there's these people, and I don't know, he might have just been very innocent, and he might be a grandfather who, because I know my dad looks at little kids and thinks, oh my gosh, they're similar to my grandson, and he kind of feels that moment of sharing that joy. But it just creeped me out, the way he was staring, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. And it really, I didn't cry, but at night I was emotional, thinking, oh my gosh, what if something happened? What if he took him? And then I'm like, let it go, because then I was conscious of my angst setting onto him. And then it's been a huge talking process for me to just, but it still feels
not good.
Yeah, it felt, as a mother, as a parent, I felt very threatened.
Whoa.
Threatened, I felt like, oh my gosh, there are weirdos in this world. So that's kind of what I felt. And the place was filled with little kids and parents. So it wasn't like, time zone, you can usually get a lot of older kids. This day in particular, there's a lot of little kids and their parents. And I just, I don't know if there's something that's in the past that that triggered that for me, or it's just that whole thing, like you said, society does generate that fear.
Yeah.
And that has had an impact on me because I felt that fear as well.
Yes.
So
Oh, so interesting.
yeah, I was like, there's a lot of things that were going on in me, and I didn't know how to kind of deal with it at first, but it's just all about letting it go. It's not nothing happened, so
Yeah.
don't hang on to things that didn't actually happen.
That's the hard thing though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the hard thing. It's so much easier said than done.
Yeah, I know, especially when it comes to little children, have that sort of issue with wanting to protect, and little kids, like it's been twice when I've seen little kids at Forest Hill just crying because they've lost their parents.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's go to centre management and they'll find your parents. And usually when you're walking through, the parents just come out of somewhere and go, what are you doing? Yeah, and you think, you don't know these people. Anyway, we're totally diverting onto other conversations.
That's all good. Oh,
but
good.
yeah, it really evoked an emotion in me that clearly there's some work I need to do on that. Okay, so when I was telling you about, when I started off with saying the whole connection with emotions and the lesions on my legs, how have you found kinesiology to help people with skin complaints?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. So in general, there's have you heard of Yvette Rose? There's a book called Metaphysical Anatomy, and it's really good at linking in physical ailments with emotional, like trapped emotions.
Yeah.
So in general, you think about like your skin, and this is a gross generalization, by the way.
Yeah.
Because everyone is so incredibly different, and when you see a client, you get down to the specific emotion, and you can even get down to the time frame as to when that seed was planted. But a lot of times you think about the skin, and the skin is a barrier. Like your skin is the barrier from the world. So when people are feeling threatened, or they're feeling really insecure, or they're feeling like, they can't speak out, it's like, so a lot of times the skin will react, and like it's the way of the body speaking out for them, saying like, sort of stand back, get away, because that person might feel a little bit like they're in the victim state, or just they can't really stand and say what they really need to say to feel protected or safe.
So if someone is young, if an illness starts from a young age and they feel they can't voice themselves, the skin can sometimes come out and create that. Yeah, because that's what happened with me. I was 11 when I had it. Yeah. And I was overseas with my mum visiting family in Greece, and I was just really homesick. I wanted to go home, but you couldn't. You had your plans, and 5 weeks in Greece at the moment, I'd probably be really excited about.
Yeah, amazing.
But at the age of 11, not so excited.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting. I wrote a few things about what Yvette Rose. It's interesting because you feel like you can't. Children feel like they can't get out of an environment. For you, it wasn't destructive. You were in Greece and it was a holiday, or who knows. But for children, a lot of times it feels like they can't get out of a destructive place, and maybe it's not destructive in like a very strong sense of the word. It could be just little things that make them feel insecure, but at the same time, they keep themselves in that situation because that's what's familiar. So there's an underlying sabotage there because it's safe, it feels familiar, I don't want to leave it, but at the same time, it's not doing me good. So that's a lot of skin stuff.
So when, and I know this is probably a very sensitive topic, but when a child gets sick from a very young age, because I've had people say, my grandchild has had psoriasis pretty much from the age of 10 months or 2, or they were born with it. Is that more of a situation of the passed on emotions as opposed to that child's own?
Yeah, you would definitely look at that and what the mom was going through during the pregnancy, but also what the child is absorbing in the environment around them, because at that point, the child is so vulnerable. Like there might be cases where the mom and dad are arguing and they're feeling that energy of that environment, but they literally cannot say anything to protect themselves. So that could be that skin just trying to talk for them. And that's what our bodies do in amazing ways. Like we don't give our bodies enough credit because our bodies are really trying to tell us things so we can fix them. But the percentage of times when we actually listen to them is like slim to none. So it can be the baby's body trying to say, this is not serving me. I need you guys to stop, or I need this to change. Or it could have been an inherited tendency or energetic miasm that was inherited from the mom or even the grandmother. And that's when you get into generational stuff.
Because it's even with the genetic pool, it's up to 3 generations. But I remember I did kinesiology with a lady when I was pregnant, and she said there's fear, and she's going, your father's side. And I'm like, yeah, certainly. There's certainly a lot of fear on my father's side. And she's like, oh, let me check. And I think she said something, I can't really remember, but I think she said something like, oh, this is 15 generations. This is from 15. And I was like, oh, that makes total sense. Because my dad is very fearful. You know, his decision-making process is always based on his fears as opposed to, you know, making a decision with the information he has at hand. And so she was bang on it, but I didn't know, you know, it was that far beyond. But I think it's probably important to mention that because I was even having a conversation with a patient once saying something about, you know, in utero, babies do absorb everything that the mother feels and experiences. And she's like, oh, just another thing to blame the mother on. And I said, no, it's not about blaming anyone. It's about awareness. So as soon as, and I think people need to know that the human body is always rejuvenating, always changing, always evolving. And so we're just simply stating these are the connections. Perhaps give kinesiology a go, because you'll be able to unearth something that you may have not been able to unearth, and it'll give you that freedom and improvement in your health. So it's not about blaming anyone or pointing the finger or saying, you know, my great grandmother was, you know, a stress head, so this is why I'm suffering it. It's just really about giving you that empowerment to try something different and give it a go, because that's, like you said, you know, when you're unwell, you try everything. And I think personally, I would say if you don't feel you resonate with the kinesiologist, then try someone else. Don't necessarily say kinesiology isn't the right one for you, because I've had 4 different kinesiologists I've worked with, and 2 have been like out of this world phenomenal. So one has, unfortunately, she's passed away. That was the one I was seeing before I got pregnant and during my pregnancy. And she was funny because I said to her, can you tell me when my baby's coming? And she said, well, I have to ask permission. And so she did. And she actually got really emotional. She started crying. And she goes, he's given me permission. I was like, oh, that's good. And then she goes, so when's he coming? And I hadn't told her about a due date or anything. And I said, I feel fine. I'm just curious to know. And she said, she checked and she goes, the 28th of May. And I said, oh, that's his due date. So I don't know if I was telling her the 28th of May because that's the date I knew, because she came on the 31st of May. But having said that, I had an epidural, which I think changed things. But I don't know if I was actually saying that to her, the 28th of May, but she said 28th of May.
Interesting.
It was really interesting. So I would certainly encourage people to give kinesiology a go, because
I agree with you in relation to the practitioner side of it as well, because I went to determine what college I wanted to study at. I went to all different kinesiologists who studied at all different places, and it was vastly different. And people resonate with different things. And so some of them they were all amazing, but some of them, if I didn't know what kinesiology was, I would have left going, what was that? But everybody's different and they all have their own journeys. I like at this point, my kinesiologist, who's amazing, technically speaking, the principal, the guy who heads up our college, is amazing and whatever else. But I still can't get from him what I can get from her. And it's just something that she embodies that,
Yeah.
that you can't even train. So,
Yeah. I think it's that connection that you have with your practitioner as well.
yeah,
You know, and
yeah,
I think for some people, you resonate more with one than the other, and I think that's probably why you have to try different people to see
do.
which one's on the same. So, am I right to know that people can possibly clear their own energy? Is
Yeah.
that a possibility?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
how does someone do that?
Yeah. Oh
And I'll
God.
be starting straight away.
We do workshops that are half-day workshops that actually give you techniques that are so when you do muscle testing, it's literally talking to your body through your muscles. Like your muscles will unlock and lock without you even really knowing that they are. And that's when we're asking questions, it's giving us information. So we do half-day workshops where we teach people how to muscle test themselves so they actually can figure out where they're holding emotions and how to clear
Okay.
them, whatever else. But if you don't want to do anything like that, there are little techniques you can use. Um, there's 2 points on your forehead. They're called ESR points. They're emotional stress release points. And these really help to clear deep-seated emotion. Or like for me, if I'm in Bunnings with my husband, I'm like walking around like this. But so it's funny because we just it's like we innately know to do that. Like it's just a reaction. Like if something's a stress, we just do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But little do we know there are actually acupressure points here that actually
Yeah.
really do help clear emotion.
Well,
And
that's gallbladder 14 right there.
yeah.
So gallbladder meridian, which is linked to the liver and which is the emotion. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
certainly.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's so interesting. I had a lady in my class and she said her little son was coloring and drawing and he'd stop and do this and then he'd color and draw and then he'd stop and do this. And she's like, why are you doing that? And he goes, it just really helps me be more creative.
Oh my gosh.
Kids are linked into this stuff. So if you
Yeah.
just want a simple technique, do your ESR points. But what you need to really consider when you're doing it is really feel into the emotion because you want to diffuse it. But what people don't do is they're afraid to feel it, and so what happens is it gets suppressed, and that's when it turns into something more.
Yeah.
But when you're doing the ESR points, you can even take it a bit further. You can put one hand behind your head, and then one hand on your forehead, and you're diffusing a lot of the limbic brain stuff, which is where you hold a lot of that emotive, that heated emotion that takes over the rational sort of cortex brain. But you're able to diffuse that through just these points and then allow that rational thinking brain to kick in and say, it's actually not as bad as I'm making it out to be because you're taking that emotion away from it and you're clearing it out of your body. So if you want one thing, and that's something all of well, I won't say all of us kinesiologists do, but in every session, if you've studied at our college, every single session, I'll have clients on the table. These points are always being activated for clients. So, and it's such a
So
simple.
is that for that specific time of feeling the emotion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Or if you're feeling blocked, if you really feel like there's something there and you just want to push through it. For me, it's just a tool that you can throw out at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're rationally not able to think through something because that emotion's just too heated, if you
Yeah.
feel like something needs to be diffused, just go to or even just this point,
Okay.
full hand coverage over the forehead.
Yeah. And press firm.
Yeah, press
Okay.
firm, yeah.
And then you kind of do it for as long as you feel that you need for it to dissipate.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
until you feel that, you'll feel the emotion shift. You will
Yeah.
feel a bit lighter. You'll feel like actually it's not affecting me the same way that it was. So sit with it. It might take a little while, but sit with it until you do feel that shift. Sometimes you can actually feel the gentle pulsing. So until that subsides a bit, the points are generally not sore. There are a few points that get quite sore. So I just wait until the points, the tenderness goes, but you find that generally these points you don't feel the tenderness in them anyway. But this really invites people again to connect in with themselves and really start feeling themselves and feeling into the emotion and feeling that shift.
So what tips would you have for someone who has got that whole negativity that they can't seem to shift?
There's a good tip.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Jerry and Esther Hicks? Do you follow them at all?
No.
Okay, they're amazing.
So
So
who were they? Jerry, did you say what's in?
Jerry and Esther Hicks.
Okay.
So she talks about, they're all about energy and creation, and how, they're the pioneers of people that work to really shift energetic consciousness. So what I tell my clients, because sometimes, I mean, it is something that is potentially ingrained. So it's just programmed for us to grab the negative thought. So what you could do once you notice it, the first thing is the awareness that it's happening, because we don't, if it's just a subconscious thing, we don't even have the awareness that we're saying these things. It's just, we grew up saying them. We don't even realize that they carry that energy.
Yeah.
Firstly, the awareness is key. Secondly is, once you say something or even think something, because obviously that does carry a vibration as well, stop yourself in that second. And it's just a simple question of asking yourself, what is it that I do want? It's called something called pivoting. So it's like you're always sort of going in this direction of negativity. You need to have that awareness. And as soon as you say, well, this is ugly or whatever, stop yourself there and say, what is it that I do want? What is it that I want this to be? Or how do I want this to feel? Or, what is it how do I want to express this? And once you go to what it is that you do want and start traveling down that path, all of what you want is going to start showing up in that way, instead of the way that you've always been programmed to do. So it's literally the pivot. You stop yourself, you're headed down that path, stop yourself right there, and then just ask yourself, what is it that I do want? It's as simple as that question.
Okay, that's fantastic. So I was thinking, gosh, I really need to come and see you. Can you do kinesiology? Because is it right that you treat people from all over the world?
Yeah.
So how does that work? How can you do kinesiology long distance, so to speak?
Okay, so I do travel firstly, so I do it in person.
Okay.
And I have to be very careful with this. So at the college, it is not compliant to say that distance sessions, it's kinesiology. And that's fair, because if you look at the definition of kinesiology, it is the study of human movement. And you can't, you've had sessions, so you can see the profound benefits when you muscle test somebody and a muscle's locking or unlocking. Well, it's unlocking, and you shift the energy, and all of a sudden that muscle's holding. You're going, oh, what's going on with that? Which is an amazing awareness for a client, depending on the type of kinesiologist you see. I don't know if you've had that.
Yeah, they've done that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't get that experience when you do Skype energy clearings or energy alignments, as I like to call them.
Okay.
So in a Skype alignment, what I can do is surrogate the energy and muscle test myself for the client to see where they're holding the emotional issue. And you can get powerful shifts from doing distance sessions. So yeah, the feedback that I get from clients, and I wouldn't do it if they weren't getting the shifts.
Yeah.
That if you want to help clear emotional things, you can shift energy and have them use their own points. I can muscle test myself, and I can see what points and what emotions and where everything, what's happening with the body, and then they use their own. They just clear their own points, and then they'll get the same shift as if they were potentially here in person.
That's incredible.
It is. That's pretty cool.
I certainly can't do acupuncture
via
Skype. So that's really good. It's good for people to know, because even if it's having the conversation and bringing that awareness, and because what I've found by just speaking to you, my head's just spinning with all these questions I want to ask. But even if someone says this is the sort of behavior that seems to be reoccurring, and then having that conversation with someone, just to get that insight or a different opinion can really create a shift, because it's like you said, it's all about awareness, and some people just aren't aware. And I think a lot of us are missing the awareness because we don't necessarily know that we are doing what we're doing. So even if just having the conversation with you instigates that's great as well, isn't it?
And the most likely, there's just, I reckon, like I said, the majority of my clients come in with just all of these subconscious sabotages. So if we can work out in what meridian system you're holding the sabotage in, and what emotions really keeping you trapped in that sabotage, and then we tap it out, you get profound shifts just from that simple technique and just from that simple awareness.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Once we finish, we're going to have a bit of a chat. Well, thank you for sharing your incredible insights. I'm so, so happy that you connected with me because, gosh, I feel so privileged with all the information you've shared. You've said it in a very easy and clear way, and I think a lot of people can take away a lot of information from what you've mentioned. And now your website is freemekinesiology.com.au,
Yes.
and you can also go on Sarah's Facebook page, facebook.com/FM Kinesiology, and connect with you there and ask questions and see how you can help. And I think, especially for people that have had that really chronic condition that seems very stuck, because even though sometimes we do a lot of things that improve, some element of it can remain just really stuck. And it might just be like that last 5%, can't seem to just lodge this 5% of this condition. And I think kinesiology is a great way to disperse that. So I really thank you for your time and insight. It's just been incredible.
My absolute pleasure.
Hang on after we finish.
I won't go.
Okay, so be sure to comment below. I'd love to hear your experiences with kinesiology or any questions that I can pass on to Sarah. And stay tuned for our next episode, which is Knowing Your Body Clock, Mother Nature's Guide to Optimal Health. And I'll see you soon. Bye.